Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of my online walkthrough. In this, I will walk you through what you will be expected to do for section B of language paper 2. I will uncover what this section looks like, how long you should spend on each question, and the steps you should take to ensure that you are really successful. I will also walk you through the potential formats and models. If you stay until the end of the video, I will share a range of different topics you could be asked to cover, alongside a range of example questions for you to practice. I hope you find this useful, and of course, if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, so in the previous video, I spoke about the different approaches to Paper 2 reading, Section A, covering the range of questions from retrieval to long compare. If you need further guidance on this section, please refer to the walkthrough I have created. In addition, you could also look back at the previous video. I'll just show you the walkthrough now that I created. Each of you have a copy of this, or 10, of course, because I have printed lots of them for you over the year. So that is what you should be referring to help your revision as well. However, if you've lost it, please refer to Google Classrooms. I have posted an online version on there. So, let's get started with Section B. What is Section B? Section B is, of course, the writing section of the exam. In this, you'll be expected to write 2 pieces of transactional writing, so non-fiction writing, often with a persuasive focus. Each task is worth 20 marks and you should be spending 30 minutes on each. Quick tip, if you find that you are particularly quick and strong at reading, you are weaker at or slower at writing, you may wish to complete Section B first. I have, of course, spoken to those of you who would benefit from this. If I haven't, please assume that I believe you're best completing Section A first. I thought I would mention this as, of course, throughout this video, I will often refer to this as part 2, but for some of you, you'll be completing this as part 1 and the reading section as part 2. Okay, so now that we have looked at a quick overview of Paper 2 writing, we will now begin to look at the assessment objectives. You will be marked against both AO5 and AO6 for the writing section of the exam. But what do they mean? Firstly, you'll be marked against AO5. AO5 refers to your communication and organisation. It measures your ability to adapt your language to suit specific formats, audiences, and your ability to structure your ideas in a clear and developed way. Please understand the word developed to be the key word here, because as well as how you communicate and organise your ideas, the quality of your ideas will also be measured. This AO is the reason I urge you to plan. It supports you in your writing and prevents writer's block. It might be a few minutes before you begin writing, but trust me, this will save you time when it comes to writing, and the quality of your work will of course benefit. This AO is worth 12 marks, so over half of the marks available for each question. Secondly, you'll be marked against AO6, which focuses on your language and the effects of it. Specifically, it looks at your sentence structure. Can you vary your sentences for effect? Can you use a one-word sentence, a short sentence? Can you include fronted adverbials? It also looks at your vocabulary and how you select your words. So, I don't think I really need to go over this, but the banned words are bad, good, sad, happy, mad. You get the point. Make sure that you are upgrading your vocabulary where possible. And finally, your whack. Can you punctuate properly? Are you capitalising names? Are you using question marks? Can you choose punctuation for effect? So these are the assessment objectives in a brief overview. Hopefully this helps you to understand what you'll be marked against and gives you some clarity on what you'll be expected to do in each task. Okay, so now that you are clear on what you are expected to complete and the rubric, let's look at the practical steps you should take. Timing in this exam is of course tight, but if you follow these steps, you'll be able to write amazing transactional pieces and remain calm in the process. So let's go through each step. Step 1 then, so what should you do first of all? Of course you should path the task, and what I mean by path is of course look for the purpose, why are you writing, the audience, who are you writing to, and your format, what are you writing. Doing this will ensure that you are clear on what is being asked of you. It is of course decoding the question. Now I've included the word lively here as a word that the exam board like to use often, and I just want to recap. I know that I've done this in lessons, but I want to recap what that means. So if the exam board asks you to write something lively, they mean light-hearted and humorous. It doesn't have to be hilarious, but of course don't take yourself too seriously when writing that. Step 2, spend 5 minutes putting a brief plan of ideas together. Remember, there are marks available for organisation, 12 marks to be exact, so planning is absolutely beneficial. And if you do your plan on your question paper, on the part where you write, there may be marks available for you if the examiner is feeling particularly generous. Step 3 then, spend 24 minutes to 25 minutes. Of course, you might not be able to do it exactly, but spend 24 to 25 minutes writing up your piece. 5 paragraphs, okay, aiming for 5. However, if you're short on time, aim for 4. For example, if you spend too long on task 1 and you're on task 2 and you've only got 25 minutes to write it, I would aim for 4 because it's more important that you get the task completed so that you're not capped. Remember the format. What must you include to make sure that it is clear what you are writing? So for example, if you're writing a speech, you may be expected to use the words such as here, today, talking to you. If you're writing a letter, of course, you're not going to say talking, you're going to say writing, etc. Okay, if you have time, and of course, make sure that you do have time by being strict with yourself with the timing. After this, spend 1 minute checking your work. Remember, there are 8 marks available for this, so checking when you've included a rhetorical question. Have you included a question mark? Have you capitalised your nouns, etc.? In terms of what you'll be expected to write, there are 7 potential forms. The way in which I remember these forms is, of course, using the acronym FLAIRS. Remember the people in the 70s with the crazy trousers. So, of course, there is a formal letter, a leaflet, or it could be called a guide, an article, an informal letter, a report, a review, and a speech. You could be asked to write any 2 of the 7 different formats in your exam. Therefore, you need to know what features are expected in each one. Of course, we will go through the features of each transactional task individually in the following slides. Now, before we look at the formats in more detail, I want to address the elements of persuasion within this exam. Each of the formats you could be expected to write will likely have a persuasive purpose, even if it's not explicit. For example, in a report where the purpose will often be to inform, you may be expected to persuade at least a little bit, particularly in the recommendations section. Therefore, it is important to try and include persuasive techniques to add flair to your flares. In this slide, I've included a range of ill persuaders. Of course, that is the acronym we use to remember those persuasive techniques. Of course, you are very capable readers, so I will not read through the entire slide. But for example, you may wish to use anecdotes, rhetorical questions, emotive language, all of those things in order to add flair to your flares. If you'd like to revise these in further detail, please pause the video now and have a look through the examples that I have provided. Let's begin looking at the flares then, and where best to begin than with a formal letter. Now, of course, a formal letter is written for an official reason, and so you will likely want to sound serious and formal in your writing. Simple things such as avoiding contractions, can't, won't, I'm, can help. But there's also a variety of other ways, which will be detailed in the model in the next slide. Let's begin though by looking at the features. So in a formal letter, you will be expected to include two addresses. Your address in the top right and the reader's address in the top left. The date will be underneath that on your right side. You would then begin to start your letter with Dear Sir/Madam or Dear their title and their last name, for example. Avoid opening with I am writing to, and instead you could start with a question that leads to the reason why you are writing. For example, did you know that in 2012 the number 42 bus ran every 10 minutes? Today we are lucky if it turns up once an hour. Use facts and opinions throughout your letter. Develop each point you make. Give examples and anecdotes, for example. Make up facts and statistics and make them believable. End with a clear expectation of what you would like to happen next. Sign off with yours faithfully, as long as you haven't stated their name at the start of the letter. If you've used their name, such as Dear Mr. Jones, then write yours sincerely, as that indicates that you know them. Of course, in terms of the structure you should include an introduction. I would then follow the what, the why, and the how structure. So what are the issues? What are you talking about? What are the details of the situation? Why should they care? Why does it matter? And how can they address those issues? Then, of course, you would conclude. So, the letter on the page overleaf was written in response to the task. Write a letter to SeaWorld to persuade them to improve the treatment of their orca whales. Okay, so I will go through this model with you in the next slide. Here is a model of a formal letter for the task previously stated. I will not read through it as I don't want to send you to sleep with my voice. However, I would recommend pausing this video to read through and magpie the different aspects you might want to use in your formal letter. Here is a Okay, so now we are on to the L of the flares, which is, of course, a leaflet. So a leaflet needs to be informative and persuasive. Use headings and subheadings. You should, of course, have a title in a leaflet, so a guide to, etc. You may include a very small section that has bullet points. If you wish. This is not mandatory, however, but please make sure that if you do so, you are still using full sentences. Use quotes, words a pretend person has said about an issue or product. For example, Dr. Jones, cancer specialist, said, sleeping with your mobile next to your head increases your chance of cancer by 14%. Do not draw pictures or use colour. That is a waste of time, and of course you won't get marks for it. You have half an hour to do this, so please don't be drawing anything. Do not lay out in columns, it's not necessary, just use your paragraphs. Add details of where the reader can find further information, for example, a website or a phone number. Make up facts and statistics and make them believable. Use features of rhetoric, so of persuasion, if the purpose is to be persuasive. So, for example, you might want to write a leaflet or a guide on the things that you can do in Leeds. And of course you want them to visit Leeds, so you would want to be persuasive. As I stated, there is often a persuasive purpose underlying for each task. Okay, so here is another model, but this time for a leaflet. And the task is, of course, to write a guide to promote your town or city as a tourist attraction. Okay, so as you will see here, there are lots of headings and subheadings being used to organise, and making sure that when you're writing a guide, it's almost like you're taking somebody by the hand and leading them through the city, showing them the wonders, or the town, of course, showing them the wonders of what is available. And this would, of course, be the case with any kind of guide that you may be expected to write. Make sure that your tone is upbeat and positive, and focus on the positive aspects of that, of course, in order to aid your persuasion. I won't read through again the leaflet, but please have a look at the leaflet and pause the video in order to see the annotations that I have made, and of course look for things that you can magpie. See you in a few. Okay, and now we have an article. So in an article, of course, you would be expected to use language appropriate to your audience. So when you're pathing that task, making sure that you fully understand who your audience might be. Use a headline, a byline, and a date. So indicating what the article is about, who wrote it, and when it was written. Include an attention-grabbing first sentence. You want your reader to really want to read on. Okay, so instead of saying, this is an article about, can you use a rhetorical question? Can you grab their attention with a statistic or a fact? Can you use a specialist name or a university and state what they have said before you go on and introduce what your article is about? Make your opinion very clear. Make sure that, of course, when you are writing an article, you are sticking with your opinion. So if it's asking for your opinion, for example, on technology, which is in the example stated below, you're not going to state that you're against it in some ways, but for it in others. You're going to either be really for it or really against it. Use quotes and statistics to support your argument. Use rhetorical questions throughout. You really want to engage with your reader and almost make it seem like you are again there, talking to them almost like a familiar friend. Of course, not talking to them, but writing to them like a familiar friend. Use anecdotes, so short personal stories, in order to showcase your knowledge and develop your ideas. And make up facts and statistics and make them believable. So the article on the next page was written in response to the task. Write a lively article entitled Technology and Me for your school magazine. We will, of course, pause and go through this in a little bit of detail. But just a top tip, remember you don't need to tell the truth. You can write in role or make things up, but keep it plausible, keep it believable. Okay, so here is an example of an article. And this is, of course, a model for the article of the task that I mentioned before. I won't read through it. Of course, again, I don't want to bore you with my voice. But please have a look through the annotations and pause the video. Take note of the structure, the ill persuaders that they use, and of course of how they are adapting to suit their audience. Okay, so now we are on to the informal letter. Now this is the type of letter you would write to a family member or a close friend. Now there are numerous ways in which you can set apart an informal letter and show that you are aware of your format. And this can of course be achieved through your tone, the way in which you interact with your reader, but also through the specific format details. For example, in an informal letter, you would have one address and a short date. Now, I didn't mention this with the formal letter, but I will do so now. When you're writing an address, imagine you are on Google Maps and you're really zoomed in on a specific house, and gradually you zoom out. Now, what I mean by that is imagine you are, for instance, zoomed in on a house called 3 English Lane. You then zoom out, you're in Farnley. You then zoom out again, you are in Leeds. You then zoom out again, you are in West Yorkshire. And then you zoom out again, and that's where you give your coordinates, which is of course your postcode. Now, following on from these formal features, I would then go on to include an introduction. Of course, remembering the acronym GASP when you're writing this. Now, GASP, of course, follows the set structure. Have a greeting, start with hello or hey, and refer to your friend's situation. You can make this up. Then have an anecdote, a chatty catch-up about your life since you last saw your friend. I would then swiftly move on to the situation, the point of the letter, and this will be clear from the question, so making sure you are looking at that in detail. Finally, state your purpose. It could be to discuss or persuade. Read the question carefully. It will tell you. Following on from this, then, I would then look at writing 2 to 3 paragraphs about the topic. So looking at the what, the why, the how structure. Of course, if this does not fit, follow the point 1, explain, point 2, explain, point 3, explain structure. But make sure throughout you show that close connection with your reader. Finally then, I would include my conclusion and sign off the letter. This should show that you care and reinforce the purpose. Do not use yours faithfully here. Instead, you could use see you later or write back soon or goodbye or lots of love, etc. Make sure that you are writing at the very least 2 sides of A4. Vary your paragraph sizes and of course still use more ambitious language. Don't use slang, of course it is still an exam, and your secondary audience is the examiner. Now the letter on the next page has been written in response to the task. Write a letter to a friend or family member, persuading them never to visit SeaWorld because of their cruel animal treatment. I will go through this with you in some detail and pause the video in order to allow you to look at it in more detail. Okay, so here is a model informal letter. Please take time to look through this and pause the video in order to ensure that you are able to do so. Take note of the structure, the way in which it shows familiarity, and also look for things that you can magpie. Happy reading, guys. So now we are on to the report, and of course this should be set out in a very specific way, and this will be detailed in the example that follows. You should be including a heading and at least 3 subheadings in the report. In your heading, you should be referring to what your report is about. So, for example, a report on school lunches at the Farnley Academy. And then, of course, your subheadings should be used for your positives, your negatives, and then your recommendations. Make sure that when you are writing your report, you are very formal, clear, and calm. Don't use contractions such as don't. That should be instead do not. Also, don't write in first person. You should be objective and your opinion shouldn't be clear. So try to write in third person using phrases such as this report finds, it was found. Make sure you include a balance of views, so positives and negatives. Include facts and figures. Formal connectives such as however, furthermore, additionally, secondly, finally, etc. And then the structure you should follow is the structure that I have outlined in previous models that we've done in class. Use your introduction, your positives, your negatives, your recommendations, and your conclusions. Make sure again you are using those subheadings. Now in your introduction, please make sure that you are also referring to what the report is, what the report aims to do, and then also look at the research you have undertaken to get the findings you have. The report on the following slide is in response to the task. Your head teacher has asked for a report of how students feel about school lunches. You've been asked to include some recommendations. You may wish to bullet point recommendations, and of course I would, but please make sure again, as it is very high formality, you are using full sentences. I will pause, allow you to pause in the next slide in order for you to have a look at the report features in more detail. So here is a model report. Please take the time now to look through the features and look for things that you can magpie in your own report should you be asked to write one. Now, of course, you will see that it has a very objective stance, okay? It is not written in first person, and you can see a consistent use of subheadings throughout. Now as well, you will be able to see that there are bullet points used particularly surrounding the recommendations, but make note of how they are still in full sentences and still have increased formality due to the format and the purpose of this. So I will allow you now to have some time to pause the video and look through the features in more detail. Make note of the annotations that I have made within this report. So reviews then. So a review is a little bit like an article. Do not retell the whole story or give away the end if you are reviewing, for example, a film or a book. Make your headline a clue to the tone of your review. So if you have a positive review, of course, your headline will indicate that. If your review is negative, it will of course also be indicated in your headline. Make it interesting and informative. Make sure you give your opinion throughout. Of course, a review is asking for your opinion, so make sure that that is clear. Again, don't be wishy-washy with your opinion. Make sure that although you may consider the negatives or the positives, that they are outweighed by your overall view of the product or topic or film or book, etc. Use anecdotes. When did you watch it or read it or do it, etc. Give a star rating at the end. Remember, you could write a review of something that you haven't enjoyed as well, okay? So it doesn't have to be positive, it can also be negative. You could be asked to write a review of a film, a book, a show, a holiday, a restaurant, a school trip, a concert, an album, etc. Okay, so I will of course allow you to look through the model review so that you can see the structure that you should follow and the tone that you may wish to emulate in your own. Okay, so that is a review in summary. So now we have the model review. Now this is, and you will see this when you read through it, a safe review. So this is a bit of a revision opportunity for you. And what I would like you to do is, once you've read through the review, I would like you to have a go at writing one, but making it more lively, okay? So write a review of a film you've recently watched. So you may wish to, of course, if you've seen this film, you may wish to review of Mice and Men, but choose one of your own and write it in a more lively manner, okay? So when you write your review, aim for at least 2 more paragraphs than the example above as well. Not necessarily more paragraphs, but making sure they are, of course, more developed as well. If you see, for instance, in the highlights and the negatives and the recommendations, they are about 2 sentences long, in some cases 1 sentence long. And of course, the examiner is looking for more development. So now, finally, we have speeches. Now, this is a format that you are very aware of and have quite a detailed understanding of, but nevertheless, we will go through the features. Of course, you have written speeches for Unit 3 back in Year 10, and you have written numerous speeches in Lesson. But first of all, let's go through, before we go through the model, of course, and look at some top tips that I would give you when writing your speech. First of all then, remember that a speech is not a formal letter. Do not start with dear, do not use the word writing. Instead, use the words such as talking, today, here. Make it seem like you are present and in the moment. Address your audience directly, using the word you, and make them feel a part of something, we. Speeches are overwhelmingly persuasive, and so you should be making your audience feel like they are going on a journey with you together. Repeat keywords and phrases, so making sure that repetition is a key part of your speech, making sure that your message is very clear through that repetition. Use punchy short sentences as part of a variety of other sentence lengths. You may wish to use a 1-word sentence, for example. Use rhetorical questions, anecdotes, and facts and figures throughout. Of course, facts and figures will show that you have done your research and you know your stuff. Start and end your speech with recognition of your audience. You may start with good morning, and you may end with thank you for listening. Rhythm is very important in your writing, particularly if you are aiming for those higher bands. Make sure your words flow throughout. Now, we will, of course, go through the model speech together and look at the key features of that. But, of course, make sure that when you are writing your speech, you are increasingly being more persuasive and showing a consistent understanding of the fact that your audience is directly in front of you. Let's go through the model. Okay, so please take some time to look through the model on this slide. Take note of how they show awareness of the audience being directly in front of them and how they engage with the audience throughout. Please pause the video and read through the annotations that I have made, and also magpie anything you would wish to steal. Okay. Now we have gone through the AO5 aspect of the exam, looking at specific formats, looking at the flares in detail. I hope that you feel confident understanding the features of each, and have you found the models particularly telling in terms of how you may wish to write certain formats. Now, what I would like to focus on now is the AO6 elements of the exam. And this is, of course, your vocabulary and your written accuracy. Now, on this slide, you will see the Fantastic 24. I've created a list of 24 words that you may wish to use in any piece of transactional writing to show that you have a firm grasp of the English language. Take your time to read through these, but also, if you are unsure of any of the definitions, use your dictionaries or an online dictionary to help you understand the meaning of these. In addition to this, I would like you to spend some time practicing the spellings of words that often trip you up. So if you know that there are a few words that you often get wrong, take some time writing those out 4 or 5 times each to make sure that, of course, you are aware of how they are spelled for the exam. Now, in addition to this, here are a few connectives that you may wish to use. Pause the video and have a look through them in order to increase your vocabulary. Over the next couple of slides, I will not be speaking. Instead, I would like you to pause the videos in order to read through them independently. Now, I will outline potential topics and possible exam tasks that could come up. But it is important to remember that writing tasks really could be about anything. Part of what the examiners are looking for is your ability to think on your feet. Any practice that you do with these will, of course, enable you to practice the skill of thinking on your feet, and thus will be really useful nonetheless. So please take the time on this slide to mind map anything you would say for each topic, but also have a look at the possible exam tasks and practice planning and writing those tasks. You also have a variety of other tasks that I have given you physically in class and on Google Classrooms. So take the time to look through those also. So now I have completed the walkthrough of Section A and Section B, and you have completed some really useful revision for this. Well done. Now all that is left for me to say is good luck. You will be amazing. Remember that you are capable of amazing things, and you are going to do well on Monday. You have worked so hard this year and deserve the absolute best. Be confident in the fact that you know your stuff. This is your opportunity to showcase just what you can do and how amazing you are. Best of luck, guys. Any further questions, please use Google Classrooms to ask them. I will ensure I get back to you as soon as I can over the weekend. Good luck. I am so proud of you. Well done.